So, how do we find strength when life throws its absolute worst at us? Well, Garanga Gopal Das's The Art of Resilience gives us this incredible roadmap. And it's not just about bouncing back, not really. It's about digging deeper, about discovering who we truly are at our core. So, today, we're going to break down the key stories and lessons from the book to find some real, actionable wisdom you can weave into your own life. And this quote right here, this is really the heart of the book's whole philosophy. Think about it. It completely challenges that common idea that resilience is all about winning battles out there in the world. Instead, it's saying, hey, the real work, that's an internal journey. It's all about understanding ourselves first before we can even begin to truly face what's outside. All right, so our journey through this book is going to follow 4 key steps. First, we'll start by building a really strong inner foundation. Then we'll get into how to shift our core perspective. From there, we'll see how our strength gets totally amplified through connection with others. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a practical toolkit so you can put every bit of this into practice. Okay, so first things first, where does resilience even begin? According to Das, it all starts by looking inward. Take the story of Maya, for example. She was a top executive, and her entire identity was wrapped up in her job. Burnout completely forced her to step back and rediscover joy in much simpler things. Or what about Arun, a super successful architect, but he was just paralyzed by imposter syndrome. He had to learn that fear isn't some permanent state you're stuck in. Even Das's own story of being this curious kid asking these huge questions, it just goes to show that our foundation for resilience is really built on self-inquiry. So, what do all these stories really teach us? It's that true resilience, it starts with being honest with yourself. It's about shining a light on those hidden fears and actually questioning the beliefs we've been carrying around for years. And that self-awareness, that's the absolute bedrock for everything else that comes after. Now, this brings us to one of the biggest obstacles we all face, right? Fear. But Taoist has a really different take on it. He actually reframes it, arguing that fear is the very crucible where resilience gets forged. And he illustrates this perfectly with the story of Priya, who was an Olympic hopeful whose dream was just shattered by a career-ending injury. But here's the thing. In her absolute darkest moment, Priya has this profound realization. She understands that the true goal was never about the medal. It was about having the courage to just show up day after day. And that shift in perspective, it allowed her to completely pivot, transforming her own pain into a brand new purpose, coaching the next generation of athletes. And you know what? We see the same exact pattern with Ramesh, a whistleblower who decides to act despite his fear, and with Sunita, a single mom who learns that her fear actually eases up when she shares it with others. What all these stories point to are these 3 pillars of courageous growth. First, you have to acknowledge the fear without judging yourself for it. Second, you make a conscious choice to act anyway. And third, you reclaim the wisdom, the lesson from every single stumble. And this quote, this is so powerful, it really gets at another key idea here, which is our relationship with expectations. I mean, whether we're talking about a dancer like Leela learning to embrace imperfection, or a farmer like Hari finally letting go of control, the lesson is exactly the same. Resilience isn't about bulking up and fighting against reality. No, it's about leaning into it, surrendering our rigid plans to make space for what can actually be. All right, so we've got our inner foundation built. Now, the next phase is all about shifting our core perspective. This is where we really get into the mental models that build resilience. So, the big question is, how do we stay grounded when the storms of life are raging? Well, Das suggests that mindfulness becomes our anchor. For a soldier like Captain Raj, stuck in a conflict zone, it was as simple as just focusing on the sounds around him. For Dr. Ananya, a trauma surgeon, it was a quick 5-minute break to focus on her breath. And for Vikram, a writer, it was just a micro pause for gratitude. All these stories reveal 3 simple but incredibly powerful anchors that any of us can use: breath awareness, focusing on a single task, and these little gratitude pauses. Resilience is also the art of rewriting our own inner stories. And this table shows it perfectly. Look at Meena. She reframed her cancer diagnosis from being a victim to being a teacher. And Dev, he turned what he saw as a failure in the Olympics into fuel for his future. Then there's Jamal, who saw his displacement not as a loss, but as a chance to become an explorer. See, by consciously choosing the story we tell ourselves, we can unlock some incredible resilience. This brings us to a really powerful and, honestly, an often misunderstood concept: surrender. Now, this isn't about giving up, not at all. It's about stepping out of the ego's chokehold.
We see this play out with Vikram, a tech magnate who finds a new purpose after a major scandal. We see it with Leela, a mother who finds solace only by letting go of her grief. And with Rajiv, a migrant worker who travels on nothing but faith alone. In every single case, surrendering that need for control, it opens up a space for something new to enter. It's like grace, riding in on the wings of humility and trust. Okay, so we've done a lot of work on our inner world, but here's a crucial point. Resilience is not a solo journey. This next section is all about how connecting with other people is what truly fuels our strength. Connection absolutely amplifies our strength. We see it with Kasum, a hospice volunteer, and Anand, a teacher who's rebuilding his community after a devastating flood. Even Priyanka, an HR head, discovers that teams built on empathy totally outperform those driven by fear. All of these examples point to the same simple truth. Kindness isn't just some luxury, some nice to have. It's actually a form of strategic resilience.
And beyond kindness, there's another powerful tool in our arsenal: joy. In fact, Das calls it resilience's secret ally. For Savita, a paraplegic athlete, this meant keeping a miracle list of all her small wins. For Rekha, a widow, it was a daily ritual of focusing on happy memories. And for Arjun, an urban planner, it was about celebrating those small public achievements. It's about finding that joy.
And of course, purpose. Purpose ignites this incredible, resilient resolve. I mean, we meet Dr. Nisha, who trades a lucrative practice to run free rural clinics. Then there's Samir, an engineer designing life-saving water filters, and Mira, an artist using her work to spotlight social justice. All of their stories affirm the same thing. When our actions serve a cause that's bigger than just us, every single challenge transforms into a stepping stone toward a much deeper fulfillment.
Okay, so we've really explored the mindset, right? Now, let's get practical. Let's dive into the actionable tools you can use to weave resilience into your daily life. So how do we actually make resilience a daily habit? Well, Das suggests creating a rhythm. You can start your day with a morning intention to connect with your purpose. Then, use a quick midday check-in to practice some self-awareness. Maybe have a weekly reset ritual, something as simple as a walk in nature, to help manage expectations. And finally, create those community circles to lean on the incredible power of connection. Now, a real cornerstone of this practice is journaling. And the prompts you see here, they're not just questions, they're tools. That first one, it helps you reframe your challenges. The second one helps you build mindfulness around your own inner narrative. And the third, that reinforces the compassion we talked about, both for yourself and for others. Next up, micro-mindful breaks. And listen, you don't need a whole hour to meditate. Resilience can be built in just a few seconds. Try taking just 3 deep breaths before your next meeting to anchor yourself, or use a 1-minute body scan to reconnect when you're feeling scattered. Or maybe take a quick gratitude snapshot. Just name 3 small gifts to shift your perspective instantly. And remember what we said? Resilience is not a solo sport. Getting an accountability partner can be such a powerful way to leverage that connection. And it doesn't have to be some huge commitment. A simple 15-minute check-in each week can give you all the support and encouragement you need to stay on track with your goals. And if you want to take that idea of connection even further, you could consider reflection circles. This is all about building a community that's really dedicated to growth, where sharing your own story of resilience becomes a source of strength, not just for you, but for every single person in the group. Wow, we have covered a lot, haven't we? From understanding our inner foundation to shifting our perspective and finally building a toolkit for daily life. The ideas in this book are so powerful, but they only work if we actually put them into practice. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. What is one anchor of resilience that you are going to build this week?